I had recently moved into what I thought would be a peaceful neighborhood. The kind of place where the air is clean, the lawns are well manicured, and the hum of daily life is broken only by the occasional sound of children playing outside. It was everything I wanted after years of chasing down criminals, speeding through traffic, and dealing with the dangers of the highway. I needed a break, a place where I could finally take a step back and breathe. The neighborhood was quiet at first, and everything looked perfect. The kind of place you'd see in a brochure. Neighbors waved as they passed, and a few even stopped to introduce themselves. I felt like I'd found a hidden gem. But, little did I know, the peace I was craving would be shattered by someone who believed she had the right to control everything. Her name was Karen, and she was the president of the Homeowners Association. I remember the first time I saw her. It was only a few hours after I'd moved in. I was unloading boxes when she arrived, all smiles, but I could tell it wasn't genuine. She walked up to me with that firm posture people get when they think they're in charge. She adjusted her blouse, glanced around, and then launched into a long spiel about the HOA and their rules. Apparently, membership was practically mandatory, though I hadn't signed up for anything yet. When I told her I needed some time to look over the rules, her smile faltered for just a second, then she handed me a binder thick with regulations. I could already tell this wasn't going to be a simple neighborhood group. It was going to be an overbearing regime. I had the sense to politely decline. I wasn't signing anything on the spot, and Karen's expression told me that was not a response she was used to hearing. She left after a while, giving my front lawn a final, suspicious inspection before storming off. I decided to take a look at the binder that night, and let me tell you, the rules in there were insane. No visible garden gnomes, exact specifications for fence height, even guidelines for acceptable flower pot colors. It was all a bit much, and I knew right away that I wasn't going to let some HOA dictate how I lived my life. Still, I kept quiet about my profession. I didn't want to show my cards just yet. The next morning, I got my first pink slip. I almost couldn't believe it. It was a citation for my house number font being non-compliant. I hadn't even gotten the chance to properly settle in, and already I was being targeted for something as trivial as that. This wasn't just a neighborhood bully, it felt like a warning. I tried to talk to a few neighbors, hoping to get a sense of whether this was just Karen being a stickler or if this was something more. Everyone avoided the topic. One older man, who looked like he'd seen a lot of years under the HOA's thumb, quietly hinted that Karen's grip on the neighborhood went deeper than I realized. He told me stories of property defacement, cars being damaged, and decorations mysteriously going missing, all things people were too scared to report because of the HOA's power. It made my stomach churn. But as I kept my head down and followed the rules, mowing the lawn, keeping the trash bins out for exactly the right amount of time, I could feel Karen's eyes on me, watching for any excuse to strike. It became clear to me that this was about more than just small fines or inconsequential issues. Karen wasn't satisfied unless she was in complete control of everything, and my refusal to comply had become a personal challenge to her. I knew I was in her sights. Then one evening, I came home to find a group of HOA members on my driveway. They were measuring everything, scribbling in their notepads like I was under some kind of investigation. When I told them to leave, they just waved their bylaws in my face, claiming they had the right to inspect my property. This was no longer about garden gnomes or fence height, it was about power. As the days went on, the citations kept coming, each one more ridiculous than the last. A porch light left on too long. A fence post that wasn't the exact shade of brown. The more I pushed back, the more relentless they became, and the more it felt like Karen was just looking for any excuse to break me. It didn't take long for me to realize that this was no longer about compliance. This was about control, and she was playing dirty. But Karen's biggest mistake was underestimating me. I wasn't some meek new neighbor who would roll over. I was a highway patrol officer. I had seen people's darkest sides, dealt with criminals who didn't fear anything. And I had the training and resources to deal with someone like Karen. The breaking point came one morning when I stepped outside and found my prized police motorcycle babysit ablaze. Flames were licking the sides of it, the intense heat making the air shimmer. I ran to grab the hose, but the damage was done. My bike was gone, consumed by the fire. My stomach twisted in anger and disbelief. I knew right away this wasn't an accident. Karen's shadow loomed over it all. I called the fire department, and the evidence they found confirmed it. Fuel residue around the bike meant it had been set on purpose. That's when I realized this had gone too far. This wasn't just some petty HOA dispute anymore. This was personal. I could feel Karen's smug presence even before I saw her watching from the edge of the crowd. She didn't say a word, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes, knowing she had pushed me this far. But I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. I had evidence, and I was going to use it. I spent the rest of the day compiling my evidence photos of the damage, the citations, the threats. I gathered everything I had and prepared for my next move. I was done playing her game of intimidation. I was going to show her exactly who she was messing with. The next morning, I woke up, put on my uniform, and made my way to Karen's house. When she opened the door, I showed her my badge. I'm a highway patrol officer, I told her, my voice calm but firm. And you just burned my police motorcycle. For the first time since I'd met her, Karen was speechless. Her smugness disappeared in an instant. I laid out the evidence, every single threat, every single act of harassment. And I made it clear that I wasn't just a neighbor she could intimidate. The word spread fast. My neighbors, many of whom had been too afraid to speak out, now started talking. Some even came forward with their own stories of being harassed or targeted by Karen's HOA. I could feel the shift. People were starting to stand up. But I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't going to back down quietly. I had evidence, and I was ready to take her down. I decided to present my case at the HOA board meeting. I walked in with my file boxes, full of photos and documents. The moment I stepped inside, heads turned. Karen's face drained of color as soon as she saw me. I laid out the evidence and made it clear that I wasn't backing down. The room was silent as I exposed Karen's abuse of power. Her facade cracked, and she tried to deny everything, but the evidence spoke for itself. As I finished, I knew Karen's reign was over, but I could see the desperation in her eyes. This wasn't the end. She wasn't going to give up without one final fight. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. The board voted to remove Karen from her position, and the community cheered. Finally, the neighborhood was free from her tyranny. In the weeks that followed, things started to settle down. The HOA was restructured, and the neighborhood began to heal. People started coming to me, thanking me for standing up. I didn't do it for praise, but it felt good to know that I had made a difference. But Karen? She wasn't done yet. I knew it. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. And when she came back, I'd be ready.